Have you ever found yourself constantly going out of your way for others, only to feel taken for granted? Maybe you've noticed that while you're always there for everyone, lending a hand, offering support, or being the reliable friend, somehow this kindness isn't rewarded but rather exploited. Today we're diving into a psychological phenomenon that might be affecting your relationships, career, and overall happiness without you even realizing it. It's commonly called nice guy syndrome, and understanding it could completely transform how you interact with the world around you. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Let's be honest, we've all been taught since childhood that kindness is a virtue. Be nice, they said. Treat others how you want to be treated. But has this advice served you well? Or have you sometimes felt that the nicer you are, the more people seem to walk all over you? I want you to pause for a moment and reflect. Has there been a situation recently where your kindness was met not with gratitude, but with increased expectations? Where the more you gave, the more others seemed to take? If you're nodding right now, you're not alone. The painful reality many nice guys faces that in today's world, boundless kindness without boundaries often isn't respected. It's leveraged. People unconsciously recognize patterns of behavior, and when they spot someone who consistently prioritizes others' needs above their own, they don't always respond with reciprocal respect. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what I'm about to share might completely shift your perspective on why your relationships unfold the way they do. This isn't about becoming unkind or adopting toxic behaviors, far from it. It's about understanding the psychology behind why kindness without boundaries often backfires. Think about it. In nature, what happens to creatures that don't establish territories or defend themselves? In human social dynamics, the principles aren't so different. When you constantly sacrifice your own needs, time and resources for others without clear boundaries, you're sending subtle signals about how you value yourself, and others pick up on these cues. What's particularly interesting is how this pattern affects not just personal relationships, but professional ones too. That promotion you deserved but didn't get? That project where your contributions went uncredited? The patterns we're discussing today might be at play. Has this ever happened to you? Have you ever bent over backward to help a friend or colleague, only to find yourself feeling resentful when they don't acknowledge your effort, or worse, come to expect it as the baseline? What you're about to discover about the psychology of respect, boundaries, and authentic connection might surprise you. And more importantly, it might finally explain why being nice hasn't been working out the way you hoped. If this video opened your eyes, hit subscribe now and keep learning how to turn weakness into power. Your respect starts here. The challenge that so many nice guys face stems from a fundamental misunderstanding. Being kind isn't the problem. It's being kind without boundaries that creates the issue. When you consistently prioritize others' needs while neglecting your own, you're not actually practicing kindness. You're engaged in a subtle form of self-betrayal. This transformation from genuine kindness to self-sacrificing behavior often happens so gradually that most men don't even notice the shift. You start by making small concessions, maybe staying late at work when you'd rather be home, or agreeing to plans you have no interest in, all to avoid disappointing others. But these seemingly insignificant compromises accumulate over time, reshaping your identity into someone whose value depends entirely on external validation. Machiavelli understood something powerful about human nature that nice guys often miss. Respect and attraction are rarely generated through constant accommodation. His philosophy wasn't about cruelty for its own sake, but rather about strategic self-positioning. When he wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both," he was acknowledging a hidden truth about influence and boundaries that still resonates centuries later. The journey from nice guy to respected man requires acknowledging an uncomfortable reality. Your needs matter equally to everyone else's. This isn't selfishness, it's emotional equilibrium. The path forward involves recognizing that authentic confidence comes from within, not from external validation or approval. I've witnessed countless men undergo remarkable personal revelations when they finally understand this principle. One client spent decades believing that disagreeing with his wife would damage their relationship. When he finally expressed his authentic opinions, respectfully but firmly, he discovered something surprising. She actually respected him more, not less. Their connection deepened not because he became less kind, but because he became more honest. The most profound mindset shift happens when nice guys realize that genuine respect from others begins with self-respect. This doesn't mean abandoning compassion or becoming callous. Rather, it means developing the emotional intelligence to distinguish between meaningful generosity and people-pleasing behaviors that come from insecurity. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic and explore the specific steps that transform this understanding into practical action in your daily life. Because knowledge without implementation creates no real change, and the impact of these principles only materializes when you begin applying them consistently. If you're recognizing yourself in this description, write in the comments, "I'm ready for boundaries," so I know this message is reaching those who need it most. The key insight that changed everything for me was realizing respect operates on a subconscious level most people aren't aware of. When you walk into a room, others form impressions of you before you've said a single word. This hidden evaluation happens through subtle cues, your posture, facial expressions, even the pace of your movements. These elements compose what I call your respect blueprint. What's fascinating is how our brains are wired to recognize authority signals from our evolutionary past. When you display consistent confidence through your physical presence, you trigger ancient recognition patterns in others' minds. They don't consciously decide to respect you, they feel compelled to. This transformation isn't about becoming someone you're not. Instead, it's about aligning your external presentation with your internal worth. Many brilliant, capable people sabotage themselves by projecting uncertainty through their body language and emotional reactions. Consider this revealing example. Studies show that people who maintain eye contact and speak at a measured pace are perceived as 38% more authoritative than those who don't, regardless of what they're actually saying. The medium truly becomes the message. The journey toward commanding genuine respect requires commitment to self-observation. Start noticing how you carry yourself when you're anxious versus confident. The difference is remarkable, and bridging that gap creates profound changes in how others respond to you. I discovered this truth the hard way after a high-stakes presentation where my nervousness undermined my expertise. The feedback wasn't about my content, but my delivery. I appeared unsure despite knowing my material thoroughly. This revelation led me to understand that emotional management isn't superficial, it's fundamental to being taken seriously. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining the psychological mechanisms behind why excessive kindness often backfires. The issue isn't kindness itself, which is beautiful and necessary, but rather how unbalanced kindness without boundaries creates a perception vacuum that others fill with assumptions of weakness. The hidden truth is that respect operates on a currency of perceived value. When you freely give everything without expectation of reciprocity, you inadvertently signal that your time, attention, and efforts aren't valuable. It's an uncomfortable reality, but one that explains why the most respected individuals maintain clear boundaries around their generosity. What I found most powerful is learning to pause before reacting. That momentary space allows you to choose your response, rather than being driven by the need to please. This small shift creates a powerful ripple effect across all interactions. If you're nodding along as you watch this, type "respect starts within" in the comments. I'm curious to know how many of you have noticed this pattern playing out in your own lives. The thing about true respect is that it emerges from a place of controlled strength, not chaotic displays of power. Machiavelli understood this when he wrote that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But his point wasn't about intimidation. It was about strategic leverage. Stop being the nice guy. Click subscribe and join the men who chose strength, strategy, and respect. When you develop the capacity to influence outcomes without appearing desperate to do so, you've mastered what I call the respect paradox. People naturally gravitate toward those who demonstrate power without constantly invoking it. Think about someone in your life who commands natural respect. They rarely need to raise their voice or make demands, because their presence alone communicates capability. This transformative approach requires navigating beyond the simplistic notion of dominance. Modern leadership studies have validated Machiavelli's core insight that sustainable influence comes from balancing perceived strength with selective vulnerability. The hidden truth here is that people don't respect those who demand respect. They respect those who demonstrate worthiness of it through consistent, principled action. I've watched countless professionals struggle with this concept, oscillating between being doormats and tyrants, never finding that crucial middle ground. The journey toward earning genuine respect involves cultivating several interconnected qualities that signal both competence and character. Self-possession is perhaps the most foundational element. When you maintain composure under pressure, you signal to others that you possess internal resources they can rely upon. This quality alone creates a gravitational pull that draws people into your orbit. They instinctively sense that your stability offers them safety in an unpredictable world. Another critical revelation is understanding the power of strategic unpredictability. Being completely predictable makes you manipulable, while being entirely unpredictable makes you dangerous. The sweet spot lies somewhere in between, where people know your principles but can't always anticipate your specific moves. This creates a healthy attention to your boundaries without breeding contempt. The mindset shift required here involves recognizing that respect isn't something you pursue directly. It's a byproduct of how you move through the world. When you prioritize internal metrics of excellence over external validation, people paradoxically become more likely to validate your worth. The disciplined pursuit of capability speaks volumes more than any demand for acknowledgement ever could. Now I want to go even deeper into the practical application of these principles in everyday interactions. There's a delicate art to positioning yourself as someone worthy of respect without overtly seeking it, and it manifests in subtle behaviors that most people miss entirely. If these concepts are resonating with your own experiences with power dynamics, write "respect is earned, not demanded" in the comments below. When we talk about letting go of the nice guy behaviors, we're not suggesting you become unkind. We're talking about a profound personal transformation that happens when you start valuing yourself properly. Think about it. How many times have you gone out of your way for someone who barely acknowledged your effort, or stayed late helping a colleague who never returns the favor? This pattern creates an invisible prison. You become the reliable person everyone counts on, but few truly value. The harsh reality is that excessive niceness without boundaries often leads to being overlooked, especially in romantic relationships. Women don't typically find Themselves attracted to men they can easily predict or manipulate. There's no mystery there, no challenge. What's fascinating is how this journey towards strategic behavior reveals hidden truths about human psychology. When you start setting boundaries and occasionally saying no, something remarkable happens. People actually respect you more. It's counterintuitive, but makes perfect sense when you understand the underlying dynamics. People value what they can't easily obtain. I've witnessed countless men experience this revelation firsthand. One client, Michael, spent years being the ultimate supportive friend to a woman he was interested in. He'd drop everything to help her move, listen to her relationship problems, and be her emotional support system. Yet she never saw him as dating material. When he finally created some healthy distance and focused on his own needs, she suddenly began seeing him differently. The mindset shift required here isn't about becoming cold or calculating. It's about understanding that your time, attention, and energy are valuable resources. You wouldn't carelessly give away your money, so why give away these equally precious assets without consideration? Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this principle applies across different relationships in your life. The impact of strategic behavior extends far beyond dating. It transforms how you're perceived in professional settings, friendships, and family. Relationships. The decision to prioritize yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Many men who make this change report feeling authentic for the first time in years. They describe it as removing a mask they didn't even realize they were wearing. This journey toward authenticity often reveals how much of their nice behavior was actually fear-based. Fear of rejection, conflict, or being disliked. If you're nodding along as you hear this, if something about this message resonates with that voice deep inside you that's been trying to speak up, drop a comment saying, "I'm reclaiming my value." I'd love to know how many of you are ready to make this essential shift. The most costly mistake that nice people make is being predictably nice. When others can mathematically calculate your response to any situation, they gain the upper hand. Think about it. If someone knows with absolute certainty that you'll forgive them, accommodate their demands, or avoid confrontation, what incentive do they have to treat you with respect? This predictability creates a vulnerability that gets exploited in countless subtle ways. I've witnessed this transformation hundreds of times. The moment someone realizes they've been the designated doormat in their relationships, the revelation is often jarring but necessary for growth. Let me make an important distinction here. Strategic ruthlessness is entirely different from cruelty. When I advocate for maintaining your boundaries, I'm not suggesting you become callous or unkind. Rather, I'm highlighting the power of calculated unpredictability, the ability to stand firm when wronged and to occasionally show that you're capable of walking away is not mean, it's self-preservation. Behind the scenes of many successful relationships, professional and personal, lies this delicate balance. The people who command genuine respect have mastered the art of being kind by choice rather than by default. They've recognized that their journey requires occasional moments of principled confrontation. Consider this hidden truth. When you're predictably accommodating, you're actually training others to value you less. It's a counterintuitive reality that many discover too late. The impact of this realization can completely reshape how others perceive and treat you. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining what happens in the social dynamics around truly respected individuals. You'll notice they possess a quality that's difficult to name, but impossible to ignore. A certain gravity that communicates boundaries without words. This isn't about intimidation. It's about authentic presence. Those who navigate life with this awareness understand something fundamental about human nature. Respect is rarely freely given. It responds to certain cues and signals that you're consciously or unconsciously broadcasting. When you've been consistently undermined, it's not because you're kind, it's because you've failed. To establish the parameters of how you deserve to be treated, the most profound mindset shift occurs when you recognize that assertiveness is actually an act of honesty. By clearly communicating your boundaries, you're creating the foundation for genuine connections rather than superficial ones built on imbalanced power dynamics. If what I've described resonates with your experiences, type "boundaries matter" in the comments section. I'm curious how many of you have already started making this transition in your own relationships. Machiavelli understood a fundamental truth about human interaction that many of us struggle to accept. Unwarranted kindness often invites exploitation. This isn't cynicism, it's a sobering reality check about the transformation that happens when we continuously forgive those who show no intention of changing their behavior. Think about the relationship dynamics in your life. When you consistently forgive someone who repeatedly crosses your boundaries, what message are you really sending? The hard truth is that unlimited forgiveness without consequences becomes permission. Each time you say, "It's okay, I forgive you," to someone who hasn't earned it, you're essentially saying, "This behavior is acceptable to me." The revelation here isn't that forgiveness itself is wrong. Quite the opposite. Forgiveness is powerful and healing. The hidden truth lies in understanding when forgiveness serves you and when it undermines you. There's a profound difference between forgiving someone who genuinely acknowledges their mistake and shows commitment to change, versus someone who has learned they can repeatedly harm you without meaningful consequences. This journey towards setting stronger boundaries isn't about becoming cold or calculating. It's about honoring yourself enough to recognize when your compassion is being weaponized against you. Many of us were raised with cultural or religious ideals that present unconditional forgiveness as the highest virtue, but this mindset can leave us vulnerable to those who recognize and exploit this pattern. The psychological impact of maintaining boundaries might initially feel uncomfortable, especially if you've built your identity around being the understanding, forgiving person in every relationship. But consider this: real relationships have natural consequences. When someone consistently disrespects your boundaries and you continue to offer unearned forgiveness, you're not participating in a genuine relationship. You're enabling a pattern of disrespect. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this principle extends beyond personal relationships into professional environments where the stakes can be even higher. The way you respond to boundary violations in your professional life sends powerful messages about how others can treat you, creating ripple effects throughout your career journey. If this perspective is challenging conventional wisdom you've held about forgiveness, write "Rethinking Forgiveness" in the comments. I'm curious how many of you are experiencing this paradigm shift right now. And while we're on this subject of strategic ruthlessness, I want to clarify something important. This isn't about becoming cold-hearted or treating others poorly. Rather, it's about making calculated decisions that protect your interests while commanding respect. Think about the most respected leaders in history. They didn't earn admiration by being pushovers. They understood the delicate balance between compassion and firmness. The transformation happens when you recognize that your time and energy are finite resources. Every time you allow someone to disrespect you, you're making a statement about your worth. The hidden truth here is that people will treat you exactly how you allow them to treat you. This isn't just about business or formal relationships. This principle permeates every interaction in your life. I've witnessed countless scenarios where individuals who consistently enforce boundaries eventually cultivate environments where disrespect becomes rare. It's almost like a social calibration occurs. People instinctively understand where the lines are drawn. This journey toward commanding respect isn't always comfortable. You might face resistance initially when you start establishing firmer boundaries, especially if people have grown accustomed to overstepping them. Consider how you respond when someone interrupts you during a conversation. Do you silently accept it and lose your train of thought, or do you calmly but firmly say, "I'd like to finish my point"? These small moments reveal volumes about how you value yourself. The revelation that changed everything for me was understanding that being strategically ruthless doesn't mean being unkind. It means being clear about my standards and unwavering in upholding them. There's immense power in this clarity. When you're decisive about how you expect to be treated, you eliminate the ambiguity that often leads to disrespect. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining the subtle ways we inadvertently invite disrespect into our lives. Many of us have been conditioned to believe that always accommodating others is virtuous. We apologize when we haven't done anything wrong. We agree to inconvenience ourselves to avoid potential conflict. We laugh off comments that actually hurt us. Each of these small compromises sends a signal about how we value ourselves. The impact of changing these patterns can be profound. When you stop automatically accommodating others at your own expense, you create space for genuine respect to develop. This isn't about becoming difficult or demanding. It's about honoring your own worth enough to expect others to do the same. If this resonates with your experiences, write in the comments, "I'm reclaiming my worth." I'd love to know how many of you are on this journey of establishing healthier boundaries. This controlled approach to emotions isn't just about appearing strong. It's about maintaining your inner compass when external forces try to throw you off balance. Think about those moments when someone deliberately tries to provoke you, pushing your buttons until you react. That reaction, that emotional release, is exactly what they want. Your anger becomes their instrument, and suddenly you're dancing to someone else's tune. The hidden truth here is that emotional self-regulation isn't about suppression, but strategic expression. When you choose when and how to reveal your feelings, you maintain authorship of your own story. This requires developing what I call emotional intelligence infrastructure, the internal framework that allows you to recognize emotional triggers before they activate and redirect that energy toward productive channels. Consider the transformation that occurs when you begin viewing emotions as data rather than directives. Anger becomes information about boundary violations. Fear signals areas requiring protection. Each emotional response offers valuable intelligence if you learn to interpret rather than immediately act upon it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining the tactical advantage of emotional discipline in high-stakes situations. Think about negotiation scenarios where millions might be on the line. The negotiator who betrays excitement at an offer immediately weakens their position. The one who can't hide. Disappointment when hearing terms reveals exactly where to apply pressure. This discipline represents one of the most profound personal journeys anyone can undertake. It requires constant vigilance and practice, recognizing your emotional patterns, understanding their origins, and consciously choosing different responses. The work happens behind the scenes, invisible to others, but transformative in its impact on your decision-making process. What makes this particularly challenging is that we live in a culture that increasingly valorizes emotional authenticity. Just be yourself and express your truth become rallying cries. While emotional honesty has its place, strategic restraint often serves your interest better when navigating complex power dynamics. This isn't about being false, but about being intentional with the truth. The most effective leaders throughout history have mastered this delicate balance. They display enough emotion to connect authentically with others while maintaining sufficient control to prevent manipulation. They understand when vulnerability strengthens relationships and when it compromises objectives. If you're finding yourself nodding along with these ideas, or perhaps recognizing patterns in your own interactions, write strategic emotions in the comments. I'm curious about your experiences with emotional self-regulation and how it's influenced important moments in your life. When facing insults or pressure, our instinctive reaction is usually emotional. We want to strike back, defend ourselves, or prove the other person wrong. But this is precisely where strategic calmness becomes your secret weapon. Think about it. The person who maintains composure while others lose theirs automatically gains the upper hand. This isn't about being passive, it's about being purposeful. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago when he observed that true intelligence isn't just about what you know, it's about who you surround yourself with. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler, he wrote, is to look at the men he has around him. This insight reveals a hidden truth about power dynamics in any situation. When someone attacks you verbally, they're often setting a trap, hoping you'll respond impulsively and reveal your weaknesses. Instead, imagine approaching these moments with calculated tranquility. Each time you resist the urge to react emotionally, you're making a choice that preserves your energy for battles that actually matter. This mindset transformation doesn't happen overnight. It requires practice and a fundamental shift in how you perceive confrontation. I noticed something fascinating in my own journey. The moments when I maintained composure during heated exchanges weren't just beneficial for that situation, they completely changed how others perceived my authority. People naturally respect someone who can't be easily provoked. There's an almost magnetic quality to this kind of self-possession that pulls others into your orbit of influence. The beauty of strategic calmness lies in its versatility. Whether you're in a boardroom negotiation, a family disagreement, or facing criticism online, this approach creates space between stimulus and response, space where you can make decisions aligned with your long-term objectives rather than short-term emotional relief. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how to practically implement this mindset in everyday situations. The real revelation comes when you begin to see verbal attacks not as personal affronts, but as revealing insights into the attacker's insecurities and priorities. Each aggressive comment becomes a window into understanding what buttons to push or avoid in your future interactions. If this concept of strategic calmness resonates with your experiences, write in the comments. Composure is power. I'd love to hear about specific situations where maintaining your calm completely changed the outcome. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic of emotional control. When we're able to make calculated, unemotional decisions, we unlock a level of personal power that few people ever experience. Think about the most successful people you know or admire. What sets them apart isn't just talent or luck. It's their ability to maintain composure when everyone around them is losing theirs. The transformation happens when you start viewing emotions as information rather than commands. Your anger, frustration, or excitement becomes data that informs your decisions rather than dictating them. This subtle shift creates an internal revolution in how you navigate life's complexities. I've seen this play out countless times in my own journey. There was a situation where a business partner made a serious mistake that cost us significantly. My immediate emotional response was intense frustration and blame. But by stepping back and asking, "What does this reaction tell me, and what response best serves my long-term goals?" I was able to have a productive conversation instead of a destructive confrontation. This approach doesn't mean suppressing emotions or becoming robotic. That's a common misconception. Instead, it's about creating space between feeling and acting, a pause where wisdom can enter. The hidden truth is that emotional reactivity keeps us stuck in predictable patterns. When someone pushes your buttons and gets the expected response, they maintain control over the interaction. By breaking this pattern, you reclaim your power and autonomy. Long-term thinking fundamentally changes your relationships too. Instead of asking, "How do I feel right now?" you begin asking, "Where do I want this relationship to be in 5 years?" The first question leads to momentary satisfaction. The second builds lasting connections. This mindset applies equally to personal and professional contexts. In negotiations, the person who can remain steady while others grow impatient almost always comes out ahead. In conflicts, the one who can listen without defensive reactions finds solutions others miss. These aren't just skills, they're superpowers in a world where most people remain captives to their emotional impulses. What's particularly fascinating is how this approach creates a positive feedback loop. The more you practice emotional control, the better your decisions become. Better decisions lead to better outcomes, which in turn reinforce your commitment to the approach. If anything I've shared resonates with your own experiences, write "mastering my responses" in the comments below. Now, the journey toward emotional mastery involves understanding several key principles that aren't immediately obvious. Perception is the currency of respect in our modern world, and this is a truth that many find uncomfortable. Consider how people who are truly good-hearted and well-intentioned often find themselves overlooked or even disrespected, while those who strategically craft their personal image receive admiration. This isn't just about superficiality, it's about understanding the psychology behind human interaction. Think about the last time you met someone new. Within seconds, your brain had already formed dozens of impressions based on their appearance, posture, tone of voice, and choice of words. This instant assessment happens beneath conscious awareness, and it shapes how you'll treat that person moving forward. The key revelation here is that when you leave your image to chance, you surrender control over how others value your presence. The transformation begins when you accept that cultivating respect isn't about manipulating others, but about effective communication. Your inner qualities, valuable as they may be, remain invisible unless you deliberately showcase them through external signals that others can recognize. This isn't dishonesty, it's translation. You're simply converting your internal worth into a language that social perception understands. I've witnessed countless professionals hit invisible ceilings in their careers because they believed their work should speak for itself. But work doesn't speak. People do. And people respond to the signals you project. The same expertise can be perceived as either amateur or authoritative, depending entirely on how it's presented. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining the specific signals that trigger respect in different contexts. There's a fascinating pattern I've observed across various professional and social environments. Certain behaviors universally command attention and deference, while others, regardless of the actual competence behind them, consistently undermine your standing. Consider the journey of one of my clients who transformed her entire career trajectory by making 3 specific adjustments to how she presented her ideas in meetings. Nothing about her intelligence or capability changed, only the packaging. The impact was immediate and profound. Colleagues who had previously talked over her began seeking her input. Senior leadership started remembering her name. The hidden truth that many won't acknowledge is that this isn't just about professional success. It extends to every relationship in your life. Parents who understand these principles raise children who listen more attentively. Partners who grasp these concepts experience more harmonious relationships. Friends who apply this knowledge build deeper connections. As we explore further, you'll discover that the most respected people aren't necessarily the smartest, kindest, or most accomplished. They're simply the most effective at signaling their value in ways that resonate with human psychology. They've learned to bridge the gap between who they are and how they're perceived. If what I'm saying resonates with your experiences, Write "perception matters" in the comments. I'm curious how many of you have already noticed this pattern playing out in your own lives. Actions truly are the currency of respect in our daily interactions, far more than the words we speak. When I reflect on my own journey through different social and professional circles, I've witnessed this fundamental truth time and again. People ultimately judge us by what we do, not what we claim to be. Think about that colleague who constantly talks about their ambitious projects but never delivers. Compare them to the quiet achiever who simply shows up and produces exceptional work, who commands more genuine respect. The answer reveals a psychological pattern that shapes our perception of others. This revelation leads us to a transformative insight about silence. In a world that celebrates noise and constant self-promotion, strategic silence has become a forgotten power. When you deliberately choose not to fill every moment with words, something remarkable happens in your interactions. You create space for your actions to speak with crystal clarity. I've seen this principle work in negotiations, leadership scenarios, and even personal relationships. There's something about the person who speaks less, but with intention, that draws others to lean in and truly listen. They've mastered what I call presence without performance, the ability to command attention without desperately seeking it. But let me be clear, this isn't about becoming withdrawn or mysterious. It's about the deliberate choice to let your accomplishments create your narrative rather than empty promises. When you focus on building a consistent record of meaningful actions, you establish a foundation of credibility that words alone could never achieve. The hidden truth here is that respect cannot be demanded. It must be earned through consistent demonstration of character and capability. Those who understand this principle stop wasting energy trying to convince others of their worth, and instead channel that energy into worthy endeavors. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this principle applies across different contexts in our lives. When we examine professional environments, close relationships, and even casual social interactions, we discover fascinating patterns in how respect is built and maintained through the alignment of our actions with our stated values. The profound impact of this mindset shift extends beyond simply gaining others' approval. It fundamentally changes how you make decisions and navigate life's challenges. When you're no longer preoccupied with managing impressions, you gain the freedom to focus on what truly matters. If any of this resonates with your own experiences, write "actions over words" in the comments, so I know we're on the same wavelength. When you understand the true power of silence, you begin to see conversations through an entirely different lens. Think about this. In those moments when someone says something rude or passive-aggressive, your natural instinct is to jump in with a defense or explanation. But what happens when you simply don't? That silence creates a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does human conversation. When you don't fill that space with words, the other person almost always feels compelled to fill it themselves. It's in this subtle psychological journey that the real transformation begins. I've witnessed this countless times in my own interactions. Once, a colleague made a dismissive comment about a project I'd worked hard on. Instead of immediately defending my work, I simply maintained eye contact and stayed quiet. Within seconds, and I mean literally just a few moments of silence, they began to backpedal, clarify, and eventually compliment aspects of the work they actually appreciated. What's happening in these moments is profound. The silence acts as a mirror, reflecting their words back to them. Without your reaction to focus on, they're forced to sit with what they've just said. That pause creates space for reflection that wouldn't otherwise exist. This technique isn't about manipulation, it's about boundaries. It's about allowing people to hear themselves. In that quiet moment, something remarkable happens. They often recognize the impact of their own words without you having to point it out. The beauty of this approach is that it requires absolutely nothing from you except self-control. No clever comebacks, no rehearsed responses, just the discipline to stay quiet and let the silence do the work. When you master this, you'll find yourself in a position of genuine power during conversations. Not power over others, but power over your own responses. You'll stop reacting to every hook someone dangles in front of you. You'll become discerning about which conversations deserve your energy and which ones simply need space to collapse under their own weight. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because the applications of strategic silence extend far beyond handling rudeness. This approach fundamentally shifts the dynamics in nearly every important conversation you'll have. If any of what I've shared resonates with your own experiences, write "Silence Speaks" in the comments below. The brilliance of Machiavelli's perspective on promises is that he understood something most people miss. Promises are tools, not sacred vows. A wise ruler cannot and should not keep his word when keeping it is against his interest, he wrote. This doesn't mean being dishonest for its own sake, but rather understanding that circumstances change. The promise you made yesterday might become a liability today, and clinging to it out of some misguided sense of honor is, in Machiavelli's view, simply poor strategy. I've seen this transformation play out in business negotiations countless times. Leaders who rigidly adhere to everything they've said, regardless of shifting market conditions or new information, often find themselves backed into corners of their own making. Meanwhile, those who maintain flexibility, who understand that promises are provisional based on conditions, tend to navigate complex situations more effectively. This connects beautifully to another Machiavellian revelation that's revolutionized my own approach to conflict: the powerful impact of selective silence. When someone provokes you, your natural instinct is to defend yourself immediately and forcefully. But what happens when you instead respond with calculated silence? The psychological impact is fascinating. Your silence creates a vacuum that makes the aggressor uncomfortable. They expect resistance, and when it doesn't come, they often feel compelled to fill that silence, sometimes even backtracking or moderating their position without you saying a word. I've witnessed executive meetings where someone threw out a deliberately provocative statement, expecting to trigger an emotional response from others. The most influential person in the room simply paused, maintained eye contact, and said nothing for several seconds. The energy completely shifted. The provocateur began qualifying their statement, essentially negotiating against themselves. This journey toward strategic restraint isn't easy for most of us. We're conditioned to believe that every accusation demands a defense, every challenge requires an immediate response. But behind the scenes of nearly every power dynamic, you'll find that those who can master their reactive impulses gain a decisive advantage. The hidden truth here isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding human nature and making deliberate choices rather than reflexive ones. By selectively applying silence, you create space for others to reveal their true positions and intentions. You also demonstrate a level of self-control that commands respect unconsciously. What's particularly valuable about this approach is how it preserves your options. When you respond immediately to provocation, you often commit yourself to a position prematurely. By pausing, you maintain the freedom to choose your response based on complete information rather than reactive emotion. If you're finding these insights making you reconsider some of your own communication patterns, write "strategic silence" in the comments. I'd love to know these ideas are resonating with you. Now, I want to go even deeper into how these Machiavellian principles can be applied in everyday scenarios without being perceived as calculating or cold. When faced with high-pressure situations, I've discovered that silence can be your most powerful weapon. This isn't about becoming a mute spectator in your own life. It's about understanding the transformative power of strategic non-response. Think about it. In those moments, when someone is pushing you for an immediate answer, your instinct might be to fill the void with words. But that space, that gap between their demand and your response, is where your true power resides. I remember watching a seasoned negotiator at work during a critical business meeting. When presented with an ultimatum, instead of scrambling to respond, she simply maintained eye contact, took a slow sip of water, and let the silence stretch. The effect was remarkable. The other party, uncomfortable with the void, began to backtrack and offer concessions that weren't even on the table before. This psychological journey happens because humans are naturally uncomfortable with silence. We're wired to fill gaps in conversation. By remaining quiet, you're essentially handing the discomfort back to the other person. They'll often reveal hidden truths about their position or make concessions simply to break the tension you've created. But the impact of strategic silence goes beyond just negotiation tactics. It creates an air of mystery around you that can be incredibly compelling. People are naturally drawn to what they can't immediately understand or categorize. When you refuse to show your hand immediately, you become somewhat enigmatic. This isn't about playing mind games, it's about understanding the subtle psychology behind human interaction. I've witnessed this firsthand in leadership contexts too. Leaders who speak less but with more intention often command greater respect than those who feel compelled to voice an opinion on everything. Their words carry weight precisely because they're rationed carefully. The revelations come when you realize that what you don't say often communicates more than what you do say. Think about the last time someone put you on the spot. Perhaps they asked a loaded question or made a demand that made you uncomfortable. If you responded instantly, was it truly your best answer? Or was it simply what you thought would end the uncomfortable moment? The mindset shift comes when you embrace silence as a tool rather than a threat. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this principle applies across different scenarios, from personal relationships to professional environments. Learning to wield silence effectively requires understanding its different forms and knowing exactly when to deploy each one. If you're nodding along to this because you've experienced the power of strategic silence in your own life, write "Silence Speaks" in the comments below. Differentiating between being useful and harmless is crucial. Useful individuals are valued for their contributions and problem-solving skills. They're the people who can step into a chaotic situation and create order, who offer solutions rather than just identifying problems. These are the colleagues who get promoted, the entrepreneurs who succeed, and the friends everyone calls when they need real help. The journey to becoming genuinely useful requires a fundamental mindset shift. It's about becoming the person who adds value in any situation, not just when it's convenient or visible. This transformation often happens when we stop asking, "What's the minimum I need to do?" and start asking, "What's the maximum value I can provide?" Behind the scenes of every successful career, you'll find this pattern: people who consistently made themselves useful beyond their job description. They didn't wait for permission to solve problems. They saw needs and filled them, developing a reputation as someone who makes things better just by being there. The hidden truth about usefulness is that it compounds over time. Each problem you solve builds your capacity to solve bigger problems. Each moment you spend developing skills that others need creates a flywheel effect in your professional life. This is how seemingly ordinary people create extraordinary impact, not through grand gestures, but through consistent usefulness. Contrast this with merely being harmless. While not causing problems is certainly preferable to causing them, merely occupying space without adding value puts you in a vulnerable position. The harmless employee is often the first on the chopping block during Layoffs. The harmless business is quickly forgotten when competitors offer something better. The harmless friend gets increasingly fewer invitations. What's particularly revealing is how organizations respond to crisis. During difficult times, the division becomes crystal clear. Useful people become even more essential, while harmless people suddenly seem like luxury items a company can no longer afford. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how this principle plays out across different domains of our lives, because usefulness isn't just about work. It's about how we show up in our relationships, our communities, and even our relationship with ourselves. The revelations about usefulness become particularly powerful when we examine how this quality intersects with purpose and fulfillment. People who consistently make themselves useful report significantly higher levels of life satisfaction. This isn't coincidental. There's something deeply aligned with human nature about contributing value. If any of this resonates with your own experience, type useful, harmless in the comments section. I'm curious to know if you've observed this pattern in your own life or career. Harmlessness is a commendable virtue, but there's a transformative distinction we need to understand. When harmlessness is misinterpreted as vulnerability, it becomes an open invitation to those who exploit the good-natured. I've witnessed this pattern repeatedly in my journey. People who pride themselves on never hurting anyone often end up being the ones most deeply wounded by the world. Being genuinely useful requires something deeper than passive harmlessness. It demands the courage to correct unfairness when we witness it, and the strength to confront those who exploit others. This isn't about becoming aggressive. It's about developing healthy boundaries that protect both yourself and those around you. Think about the natural world for a moment. Even the most peaceful creatures have defense mechanisms. The porcupine's quills, the skunk's spray, the turtle's shell. They don't seek conflict, but they're equipped to respond when threatened. This is the hidden truth about true compassion. It comes with edges. I remember working with someone who prided himself on being the nice guy in every situation. He avoided all conflict, never raised his voice, and accommodated everyone's demands. Behind closed doors, however, he was drowning in resentment, his health deteriorating from the stress of constant compliance. His harmlessness had become a prison. The revelation came when he learned to say no, to establish what was acceptable and what wasn't. Far from making him less kind, it made his kindness more authentic. People respected him more, not less. His relationships improved because they were based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. This mindset shift doesn't happen overnight. It requires practice, self-reflection, and sometimes uncomfortable confrontations. But the impact it has on your life is profound. You'll find yourself surrounded not by those who take advantage, but by those who appreciate boundaries and reciprocate respect. Now, I want to go even deeper into this concept by exploring how this balance between harmlessness and usefulness plays out in different contexts. The framework I'm about to share has helped countless people transform their approach to relationships, work environments, and even community involvement. If you're resonating with what I'm saying so far, type "boundaries matter" in the comments. I'd love to know if this perspective is striking a chord with your own experiences. When you're too agreeable and predictable, you become an easy target. Think about it. If someone knows exactly how you'll react in any situation, they can manipulate those reactions to get what they want from you. This is the hidden truth about human dynamics that nobody talks about openly. I've observed this pattern countless times. Someone who always says yes, who never causes a scene, who prioritizes harmony above all else, they're the ones who get taken advantage of most frequently. It's not because they're weak. It's because their behavior follows such a consistent pattern that others can exploit it without consequence. The real power lies in controlled unpredictability. This doesn't mean becoming erratic or unstable, quite the opposite. It means cultivating enough mystery in your responses that others can't easily map out how to manipulate you. When people can't predict whether you'll agree, disagree, or walk away entirely, they approach you with a fundamentally different mindset. This creates a fascinating psychological shift in how others perceive you. They move from thinking, "How can I use this person?" to "How should I approach this person?" It's a subtle but profound transformation in the power dynamic. The unpredictable person isn't feared, they're respected. I experienced this transformation personally when I stopped automatically agreeing with colleagues just to keep the peace. The first time I calmly but firmly disagreed in a meeting, the energy in the room changed. People who had previously talked over me suddenly wanted to hear my perspective. They couldn't predict my stance anymore, so every opinion I shared carried more weight. What makes this principle so powerful is that it works across all relationships, personal, professional, even casual interactions. The moment someone realizes they can't predict your response with certainty, they begin treating you with greater consideration. They weigh their words more carefully. They make fewer demands and offer more genuine exchanges. The journey toward strategic unpredictability isn't about becoming difficult or contrary. It's about reclaiming your autonomy in each situation, assessing what you truly want, and responding authentically rather than automatically. Sometimes you'll agree, sometimes you won't, but the choice will always be consciously yours. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining the specific mechanics of how predictability creates vulnerability in everyday situations. Because once you understand the pattern, you'll start noticing it everywhere, from negotiation tables to family dinners. If any of this is resonating with your own experiences, type "unpredictably powerful" in the comments below. Let me walk you through the profound transformation that happens when you shift from reflexive niceness to strategic assertiveness. This isn't just about changing your behavior. It's about reclaiming your authentic self in a world that often rewards those who can manipulate the predictably nice. Think about those moments when you felt pressured into saying yes when you wanted to say no. Remember how that inner conflict felt. That subtle resentment building as you sacrificed your needs for someone else's comfort. That's the hidden cost of automatic niceness that rarely gets discussed. Your mental bandwidth becomes occupied with unspoken frustrations instead of focusing on what truly matters to you. The journey towards strategic assertiveness is deeply personal. It requires examining the root causes of your people-pleasing tendencies. Perhaps you were raised in an environment where your worth was tied to your agreeableness. Maybe past experiences taught you that conflict leads to rejection. Understanding these underlying beliefs is the first revelation in your path toward authentic interaction. What's fascinating is how quickly the dynamic shifts once you introduce unpredictability into your responses. When manipulative people can no longer rely on your automatic compliance, they often reveal their true intentions. I've seen countless relationships transform once boundaries are established. Some strengthen as mutual respect grows, while others naturally dissolve when the one-sided benefit disappears. The real mindset shift comes when you realize that being strategically assertive doesn't make you unkind. It makes you intentional. The quality of your relationships actually improves because they're built on honesty rather than obligatory niceness. You'll find yourself surrounded by people who appreciate your authentic self rather than those who simply benefit from your compliance. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this principle of strategic assertiveness can transform specific areas of your life. From workplace interactions to family dynamics, because the impact of this shift extends far beyond individual conversations. It completely reorients how you navigate your social world. If you're recognizing these patterns in your own life, and this resonates with your experience, write "Boundaries protect my spirit" in the comments below. The beauty of this transformation is that it ripples into every corner of your life. As you practice strategic assertiveness, you'll notice something remarkable. The mental energy you once spent on people-pleasing becomes available for your own growth and authentic connections. I've seen people who embrace this shift describe it as finally breathing freely after years of emotional constriction. That's because when you stop performing niceness and start engaging authentically, you're no longer carrying the weight of others' expectations. If you've stayed with me through this exploration of authentic interaction, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. We'll continue unpacking these nuanced human dynamics that so profoundly affect our daily lives. If this message resonated with your experience, leave a comment saying, "Boundaries protect my spirit." I read every comment, and it helps me understand what matters most to you. Give this video a like if you found value in this perspective. It's a small gesture that helps others discover this conversation. There's a video right here that explores how to handle the pushback you might receive when first establishing boundaries. Click and continue with me there as we deepen this journey toward authentic self-expression.